Rev up your engines! Honda Fit. They don't sell them in the United States anymore. Now, Honda still sells these Fits, Jazz, they give them different names all over the world. They sell them all over the world still. They got a new model generation out 2023, but they stopped selling them in the United States. Were they rolling piles of junks? Did their engines or transmissions blow up? Well, they have 1.5 liter inline 4-cylinder engines that don't burn oil, that don't blow up like Kias and Hyundais. These things don't really have engine problems whatsoever. Now, these engines put out 130 horsepower. For a vehicle this small, it's plenty enough to get around, but they do come with a CVT transmission. Now, Honda does make pretty good CVT transmissions. I'm not particularly a fan. We're gonna road test this thing to see how it actually feels. Now that it's got 60,000 miles on it, I mean, they're not race cars. Now, if you put a standard transmission in this little thing, it'd be a real zippy little thing to drive. But we'll see how it goes with the CVT. But these are small economy vehicles, right? On a highway, this thing gets 41 miles a gallon, and in a city, it'll probably get about 33. It averages about 36. You get a little compact car like this, you might think it's compact, but if you open the trunk, you can see it's got a reasonable amount of space. And of course, when you pull these down all the way, man, you got all kinds of room to stick stuff in. The main reason they're not selling them in the United States is because it doesn't really fit in to what Americans generally want. Americans generally want a bigger vehicle. Honda sells the Honda HR-V and Civic hatchbacks instead of selling these Fits. They're bigger. They have more room inside. You get 25, 35% more room, depending on whether you have the seats down or the seats up in the bigger ones than in the smaller one. They just thought this thing was too small for the American market. Now, they still sell them like mad all over the world. They call them Fits, Jazzes, they call them all kinds of things. But they kind of realized, well, Americans want something a bit bigger than this, and of course the bigger cars go for more money, so there's more profit involved. From what I've seen, there's thousands of people that love these Fits that are kind of mad they're not selling them anymore. Kind of like me with my Toyota Matrix, right? I love the cars. Maybe the best all-round car that I ever bought. I bought it for my wife for her birthday, right? I think 17 years old, still looks great, runs like a top. They stopped making them. Why? Because Toyota thought, oh, they're too small. We want to sell the bigger ones. They made those in Cambridge, Ontario, right? And now they just make Lexuses there, more profit. So there's nothing wrong with the vehicle, just like this Honda Fit. They do make the Fits all over the world, but this is the best ones they ever made, because as you can see, made in Japan. That's where you want them. Now, as we go inside, it's a typical subcompact car. Pretty basic. It's got black and chrome trim, but, you know, we're going to be changing the oil later. Move that out of the way. Cloth seats, but they're comfortable. They fit quite well. And the back seat still has a reasonable amount of room in it. It's not tiny. All the space that is in here was pretty well designed. This even has a sunroof. Well, in this case, it's an ice roof. Now, like I said, it's not a race car, but, you know, we'll start it up. It's got the push-button start, which I don't like, but it does have a real emergency brake. That's a plus to me. It does have a pretty much basic interface here. It's a 2016. It's an Econobox car. It's got basic things on here. And you can see the heating is really simple. Fan, heat, modes, pretty simple machine. And the recircus, look, it's an actual lever, so it won't break. I like that. I like simple things. Old school, so it's got a CD player. It's have a tach, nice, easy to read speedometer, and some basic steering wheel controls, radio infotainment, and even though it's a CVT transmission, it's got these fake shifters. We'll try them out later. Econobox car, it's not bad. It's got power outlets, HDMI, and as I said, the back seat, not too bad. I'm not tiny, and I fit in here even with the seat the full way back. They're comfy little cars. Now we're gonna plug in my new X-Tool D9 It's a pretty fancy scan tool. We're gonna see what kind of shape it's in. You never know. Car's been wrecked, if it has weird problems, buying a used car. It's Honda. They're pretty much bulletproof cars if you take care of them, but you never know what the history of a car is when you buy it used. Start out with auto scan. Let's see, there's a lot of data in these things that's going to go through. Now everything it has is fine except for the ABS system. We'll look at the trouble codes. Electronic control unit, power source failure, low voltage. Now, could be a weak battery, could be just some kind of minor flaw. So the first thing we're going to do, we'll clear the code. Now we'll check it again after our road test. Now it's cleared. So what we want to do is go back and we're going to analyze this whole thing. Start her up. You can see there's no codes now. What we want to look at is the main information, which is the engine system. The live data starting up here. Start checking out. There's 165 bits on this car. We'll see if anything looks odd. Wave sensors, good. These are color coded, so we know they're good because they're black, but we want to look at them all to see what kind of shape the engine is in with 60,000 miles. Almost running perfect. The lambda should be 1. It's 1.00, 1.01. That's about as perfect as you're going to get in a car. Now you can see the misfire. Okay, there's 0 except for cylinder number 3. There is 1 misfire. Now it runs perfectly fine and the owner isn't complaining about anything, but it does still have the original spark plug. So just, and now it's 2016. This thing's 7 years old. I would change the spark plug. You can see that misfire was only on one particular test, because now we go to cylinder 3 misfires and it's 0 like the rest of them. So it was an extremely rare occurrence. A machine like this can even read the camshaft position pulses to see if they're working or not, and the crankshaft position pulses, both of them. No more guessing. Gee, is this bad? Is that bad? This machine tests them. Shows you the data. Something you got to have if you're a mechanic. And if your mechanic doesn't have one of these and he's working on your car guessing with parts, you know what I say? I guess it's time to get a different mechanic who knows what he's doing. The fuel consumption when it's stopped and idling is this many cc's, 9,327, and the fuel consumption in the city is 92,210. Shows you how much fuel you're using driving versus just idling. The fuel pressure is very high. Well, that's because this is an Earth Dream engine. It's a GDI, a gasoline direct injection system. That's one of the ways they can get good power but really get good gas mileage. It's very complex. That's why you need a machine like this if you work at them to see what's going on, because you can see how high that pressure is. You try to hook pressure gauges up to those systems, you're going to get leaks all over the place. You need to be able to do it through a machine instead. It tells you the temperature of the battery, 4 degrees Celsius. But in the summer, and if you have some kind of electrical problem, it can show you that it's getting too hot, then you know there's a problem. A lot of data in these things that really are useful. And in our Hondas, they don't break down all that often, but with this Earth Dream systems, it's very complex, just like Ford's EcoBoost system. Only this doesn't have a turbo in it. This is just a plain old 1.5 non-turbo engine, which is going to make it last longer. If you're the person that likes long-lasting vehicles, definitely get a non-turbo smaller engine. Don't get a little engine with a turbo, because it's going to wear out faster. This thing will probably run and run. It doesn't burn any oil. You can get 41 miles a gallon on the highway. Hey, that's what people buy these vehicles for. All right, now we'll start it up. Take off the manual brake, which I like. And we'll see how the CVT transmission works. Got a little bitty backup camera. It's kind of messy because it's icy today. You can see the ice, but you get an idea where you're going. Now, as we drive along, it is a subcompact, but it's relatively high up in the air. You're not feeling low. It's got a nice ride height. You see, it's a CVT. It doesn't shift gears. And you're going to hear pieces of ice falling off because it's warming up. They are fun, zippy little cars to drive. I mean, hey, this thing is fun. And like I say, not outrageous horsepower, but it's a Honda and it's a light car. Now, as a typical CVT, you step on the gas. Makes a lot of noise, but it's still got decent horsepower. Mind you, it would be a little screamer if it had a standard transmission in it, or maybe like a 6 or an 8-speed automatic instead of a CVT. Now, I've put it in the manual gear, and you can see here, it's S1, it's in first gear, so it doesn't really have gears, but it pretends that it's in first gear. You can see it goes, but it doesn't feel like gear shifting, really. It does give it a little more pickup, lets it rev more. See, but you really don't feel, it's not a race car. It's a fake trying to copy gears of the CVT system, and it's not the greatest system. That's not why you buy a car like this. You buy these for gas mileage. So we'll put it back in regular gear and we'll see how it takes off with just regular. It had a little wheel spin. And of course they rev higher because they're CVTs. There's no gears. A regular Honda with a standard transmission or an old-fashioned automatic transmission with gears is actually a lot more fun to drive. Now, up until 2015, they had to recall these CVTs. They had a problem with the shafts wearing out, and they recalled us to reprogram it so it shifted differently. They didn't fix anything mechanically. They just reprogrammed them, which is kind of a cheat of a deal. But this is a 2016, and they don't have that problem. This one is 7 years old, had no problems at all. Still makes the car run perfectly fine. Just not my cup of tea, really. But if you're the type of person who wants a subcompact, you want great gas mileage, you're not racing around, it's perfectly good for driving around, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's just that it's not like the Toyota CVT that has the launch gear that takes off really nice in an actual gear, then it switches to CVT after it's out of first gear. Honda really, if you ask me, should do something like that. It'd make these cars a lot more fun to drive. Because really, the addition of these fake paddle shifters, that for down and that for up, when you put it in the S mode, it really doesn't work that well. It really isn't like you're shifting gears and get all that more acceleration. It's not that smooth either. There's no way on earth that you can compare this to, say, a dual clutch transmission with the paddle shifters that's instantaneous. It's kind of an add-on thought that, I don't know, I guess people were complaining so much, they thought, well, that'll make it a little bit faster, so they put it on. But as I say, as a subcompact economy car, hey, the rest of the world loves these. They're still selling them like hotcakes, right? That's just kind of too small for the American market. Americans don't like that little bit of acceleration. That's why Honda's throwing turbos in a bunch of their stuff now to give more zip. But as I said, truthfully, the non-turbo in this engine's gonna last a long time. Honda probably makes the best engines in the world. Sure, it's only 1.5 liter, but it's not turbocharged. It's in a smaller car. Get 41 miles a gallon on a highway, and hey, it might run for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of miles. Because if you're just driving around normally like this, it's plenty smooth enough, zooms along, doesn't make all that much noise for a small car. It's pretty well put together because, again, this baby was made in Japan. They're not all made in Japan, but a lot of the ones in the American market were, and they are much better made. Now, the owner does say at certain times he hears a noise coming from the back when he starts driving that goes away quickly, so we're going to check that out later when we change the oil. But he says it's been doing it for over a year, so I'm thinking it's probably something with the tire itself, out around or somewhat worn. We'll check that out later. This cool side view, we have the turn signal on, and you can see to the right. Hey, that's pretty cool. I gotta say, that worked pretty well. The only one's is oil change, but you remember it had a low voltage. Well, here's the problem. This is a new battery. Pretty new. It was put in just a few months ago. If you remember early in the video, I erased the code for the ABS problem with low voltage. Well, that obviously occurred when the old battery was in and nobody has reset it. Whenever you have problems with the car related to the battery, you have to get a guy like me to hook up a fancy scan tool like I have to reset the systems. Because if you don't reset the system, they'll continue to tell you that there's a problem in that system because nobody reset it. There's nothing wrong, it's just he had the battery changed, then nobody reset it. Now we're going to change the oil, and here's a real big tip. You want to use the right oil, 020, 020, and you want a good filter. He got a good filter. It's an extended 15,000 mile one. Realize the cheap filter is usually only good for 3,000 miles. I advise people to change these about every 5, make the engines last longer. You can push it to 7,500 if you do a lot of city driving, but I change mine every 5,000 miles. In this case, it should be 3.5 quarts. Do not just guess or read something. Oh, Joe said this on the internet. Hey, you're not going to buy all data for 150 bucks a month, right? Obviously not, unless you're a mechanic. It should be 3.5, and even I don't trust half the stuff, so I'm going to see how much comes out. So, jack it up in the air. Then we'll stick a jack stand so it doesn't squash us. The tires are still on, but it's awful low. Now I gotta move the icicles out of the way. And then to fit under there. I see when I go under here, the bane. To get a little bit better gas mileage, they seal it all in, so you gotta take all this plastic crap off to change the oil. What a pain in the rear end. Screw the Honda engineers on this one. I hate cars like this. They get tiny bit better gas mileage, if any. Every time you change the oil, you got to take all this crap off. It's ridiculous. I mean, it really is annoying to have to take all this crap apart every time you change the oil. Just plain stupidity. All that just to get the simple stuff. Now, if you get a long cheater bar like me, then you can easily get the oil drain socket off here. It makes it a lot easier to break them loose. And you can just spin the rest with your hand. Have your pan ready to catch it. There we go. Once it stops dripping, you put the plug with a new gasket in. Because you never have to worry about it coming off, it's so long. Now the oil filters are always on super tight. So you need an oil filter removal tool like this. It fits over it. There, now we got it back on. We can stick a ratchet on it, and then we can loosen it up. There, now it's coming off. Then get that out of the way and do the rest by hand. Here we go. That's on a long thread too. First you dip it in the oil a little so the seal has oil on it. Then you screw it in up here. That way the oil will make it nice and tight and it won't leak. And if you don't do this, even if you get it on tight, you'll find it won't want to come off because it's bare rubber on metal. You always want to lubricate it a little bit before you put it on, or you'll be sorry. It'll either leak or it won't come off the next time. Get it on as tight as you can. And then wipe all the residue off, because if you don't, then it'll drip and you'll say, oh, I did something wrong, it's dripping. Clean it all off. It gets all over the place. Now I know for a fact that it's 3.5 quarts of oil, because that's the level on my pan. That's a lot higher if it's 5 quarts. You can take it out, measure it yourself if you want. I'm not going to bother measuring it. I'm just going to test it up there when I'm done. But you can easily measure it. I know it's 3.5, because if it was 5 quarts, it would have been up to here instead of down there. And then, of course, put the stupid plastic shield, and you're going to have to be like me with this. A bunch of them are plastic clips that break. I have boxes of these clips. Be prepared. Or, if you can't stand it, just leave the plastic piece of crap off and you won't have to deal with it anymore. I'm putting it back on, but you're going to have clips because the old ones always break when you take them off. So we'll now put 3.5 quarts in, then we'll check it. There's a little line here. You can see how much goes in. And I like big funnels because they make less of a mess. Just keep going until you've used up 3.5 quarts. Check it out. Check it. And yes, indeed, it is full. And of course, don't forget to put the oil filter cap back on, or oil will get all over the place. Get it nice and tight. So here we go for road test 2. All right, we'll turn everything off, the heat, fan, take it for a little spin. We'll let go of the gas. Tiny tire noise back there. Which is that tire. That's all I can hear. I wouldn't worry about it. Now you're always going to hear noises here and there in these runabout cars, the little subcompacts, and this one is actually quieter than most. They're not going to be like my wife's Lexus, smooth and quiet. They're going to make little bits of noise and stuff like that. You don't worry about it. There's nothing structurally wrong. If you wanted to buy another tire, but I wouldn't. It's still got tons of tread. So there you have it. The truth about Honda Fit. The reason they don't sell them anymore in the United States is they felt they were too small. Basically, the Civic hatchback can serve just the same type of purpose, and then their little bit bigger one that they have now has got about 35% more cargo space than this thing has, an interior room. So they stopped selling in the United States, but they sell them all over the place. As far as I'm concerned, this is a nice subcompact car, other than I don't like the CVT. Kind of sloppy, and that silly shifting with the paddle shifters. You're not actually shifting anything because there are no gears inside it. It's fake. It feels weird. I wouldn't even bother putting it on the car. There's much better ones out there than that design. But in terms of a get you from here to there and last a long time, they can be great little cars. And I wouldn't worry about buying one if I bought one used for getting parts. Sure, they don't sell them in the United States, but they make them all over the world. And most of the parts on these are interchangeable with Civics, you name it. Honda uses the same parts on many of their cars. You're not going to have a problem getting alternators, starters, brake pads, wheel bearings, whatever. You don't have to worry about, oh, they don't sell them in the United States, how am I going to get parts? Yeah, if you're talking about Peugeot or, you know, Citroën, some oddball, or Fiats, sure, you can have a hard time getting parts in the United States. But not these things. And if you're a cheapskate like me, you like the 1.5 liter non-turbo engine, I've seen these things with 500,000 miles on them. You don't turbo it, it goes plenty fast enough. Sure, I'd rather have a standard or a normal regular transmission automatic with gears instead of the CVT. This one still works perfectly fine for what it is. Kind of sloppy. I don't particularly like its lack of acceleration, but as an all-round driving car, they're pretty good cars. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.